Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our main event! Hosted by Eric McMahon, it's Cageside with Jon Morgan!
And welcome everybody to another episode of Cageside with Jon Morgan. I am your host, Eric McMahon. Wild, fun, tremendously busy weekend that we just got off in the world of combat sports, headlined by maybe possibly the biggest boxing event of the year. Not going to touch too much into that because you know what? We're more of like MMA guys than boxing, but I did want to broach that and just say a big boxing match happened. A winner stays undefeated. Boom, we're moving on that. Let's recap what we're going to be talking about today before I bring in the man. So UFC Fight Night 222, followed by Bellator, followed by looking ahead. We have a monster card down the line, UFC 288. We'll talk about that. To help me talk about all of it is the man. You can follow him at Twitter, Jon Morgan _MMA. His name is Jon Morgan. What's up, pal?
What a crazy weekend it was, man. Like I said, so much MMA happening, some big boxing happening as well. Just a crazy, crazy weekend. And I actually got to sit in the stands for once. I actually got to watch some fights with my family. I was so busy with CFFC 119 down in Florida. I missed the media day here in Vegas. I missed the weigh-ins in Vegas for the UFC. So I said, you know what? How about I don't sit on press row? I just sit in the crowd. So I got to soak it in from a different perspective and then watch everything else that was on TV, man. It was a crazy weekend. So I'm doing good, but back to normal this week.
It's funny you say that because, working for the Memphis Grizzlies, doing what I do, I haven't been to a sporting event as a fan in probably a decade. And I love sports. It's just, and I never get to take it in through an experience not entrenched in exactly what I'm doing in a very microcosm of the bigger picture. So I assume you're very similar to that. How was that sitting in the stands as a fan, just soaking it in, albeit in the Apex Center, but still?
Yeah, no, it's fun. I try to do it about once a year, right? Just to go hang out with the family because I like to take them to fights and let them soak it in a little bit as well. But it's fun, and I like the Apex. I mean, it's a small environment, but it's so intimate, man. You're right on top of everything. But I'll tell you what, man, we ended up sitting next to the families of some of the athletes, and that is tough, man. It just adds, you see their tension, you see their pressure. It's such a unique thing about fight sport, right? Like, we get excited and you're like, yeah, I love fights and it's amazing. But man, when it is somebody you care for and somebody you love in there, the tension that's on there because, they're putting their health, they're putting everything on the line and there's nothing you can do to help them whatsoever. And sitting right there watching them and just watching their interactions with each other and how it's a reminder just how tense this sport can be as well. But overall, it was a very, very, very fun. Like I said, I like to do it about once a year. Just go sit in the stands and try to enjoy it that way. It was a good time.
We're going to call that Jon Morgan privilege. Jon Morgan privilege gets to walk into the Apex Center and say, you know what? I'm going to walk into a closed environment where tickets are very limited. And you know what? I'm going to bring my family too, which, listen, as a family man, I respect the hell out of that. But that is the epitome of Jon Morgan privilege.
That's funny.
But hey, if you got it, exploit it, right?
That's funny. It's true. I mean, come on, you gotta go check out a game every now and then, right? You got a little ties to get some people in the door every now and then, right?
I got a lot of those. I got a lot of them. And guess what? I exploit the hell out of it. Usually I can't partake though. It's usually like, hey, I got you. But man, that's super cool that you got that experience. I know that you are clamoring to figure out how I did in the IBJJF Nashville Open.
I assumed that was going to be the lead. I assumed that was going to be the lead that we were going to start with today.
Double gold, baby. I won gi. Tremendously tough tournament in gi. I'm not going to say I won. I survived.
Right.
I survived, but I won. My wrestling really proved out in that. And then no-gi the next day, which was yesterday. It was a little bit easier time, but that's kind of my jam. But make no mistake about it, I ain't going against the young killers. I'm going against the old man. I'm 43 years old. But hey, still brown belt level. These guys are legit.
Congratulations nonetheless, man. I mean, dude, you could kind of minimize it by saying you're going against some of the older guys, but that's your peers. I mean, that's your age group. That's what you're supposed to do in combat sports. And congratulations, man. Well done.
Boom. Love it. But Hey,
Does that mean
moving
the
on.
competitions are we booking competitions now, or did that fill the need for a while?
No, I compete a lot. Since this podcast, I don't talk about it, but I try to compete as often as possible. Another couple months, I'll be in New Orleans for a competition, then head down to Vegas for the World Championship, World Masters, and I may take you up on John Morgan privilege and get an Apex Center visit there. With that being said, let's just dive into the Apex Center. It was UFC Fight Night 222 and headlined by, I think we can all agree, if Pavlovich were to win, he's going to get a next shot looking in privilege. I think Curtis Blaydes may have had a tougher road, even if he would have victory. But wow, another first round knockout for Sergei Pavlovich. That's 6 straight UFC victories, 6 straight first round knockouts. His only loss in the UFC, and his career for that matter, was back in 2018 in his UFC debut against the Reem. He clearly has proven he's got the next title shot. And break that fight down for us, because you were there.
Man, it's just so impressive to watch this guy. I mean, you see what he does. He is an absolute killer on the feet. He's destructive. And going into this, we were hanging around outside talking to some people before we walked in the doors, and we were, they see me and they're like, "Oh, what do you think, man? How you break this down?" And I really was thinking this was a 50-50 fight. I thought, if Curtis could survive that initial onslaught from Sergei, then maybe he could swing this thing in his favor. The longer it went, it certainly favored Curtis Blaydes. If he could implement his wrestling game, it would certainly favor Curtis Blaydes. But you have to get past that initial swarm, and he wasn't able to get past the initial swarm. But I'll tell you what's impressive to watch about Sergei is just how kind of calm he is. Even though, yes, he's this berserker with these knockout blows, sometimes you see people that are they're pressing forward and they're throwing wild shots and they're getting themselves off balance and they're just throwing haymakers. And his seems to be with so much more precision and so much more calmness and fire as he's in there. He's a scary dude in this heavyweight division, and absolutely right. Against anybody in the division, he has the ability to knock them out, and he did it here against Curtis Blaydes. Very, very impressive.
I mean, impressive really isn't even the word to describe this performance. And I know it's like, for lack of a better term, we'll just say impressive. What jumped off the screen to me, and it jumped off the screen, was the speed. You said precision, but I'm thinking you're throwing speed into that precision. The speed at which you have a 260-pounder throwing these precise, straight shots. Because let's go to a guy like, I don't know, Francis Ngannou, right? The elephant in the room. Francis Ngannou. He throws pretty quick, but they're just these raw, right? And he happens to catch you and catches everybody. But the speed that Pavlovich was working with and the precision was just so damn impressive.
It really is. And I think that's what marks the difference, is exactly that. And that's what makes him, to me, I think this man is even scarier than Francis Ngannou at this point in his career. I think this man has the ability, to finish anybody. And he doesn't get himself out of position. He's unrelenting. He stays right in front of you. And you said it, that speed, that actually everything that he does. Curtis Blaydes never even got to implement his game whatsoever. This guy can absolutely be a UFC champion. There is no question about it. He has the tools. And did you see the video of him that came out earlier in the day that Aljamain saw the man sitting there playing slots earlier in the day? He's at his hotel hours before his UFC main event against Curtis Blaydes, and he's just playing some slots at the hotel, just kind of hanging out. So he's like this absolute killer, but he's also just kind of relaxed, hanging out, just doing what I do.
That's the epitome of saying some men are built for this. Right?
Yep.
The moment is never bigger they're never bigger than the moment, or the moment is never bigger than them. And they're just like, I'm here to clock in and clock out. I am built for this game. So I watched this in my hotel room in Nashville, and I got to watch it with a teammate of mine, Big Mike. If you're watching, shout out. Right. And we kind of started talking about Curtis Blaydes and the game plan that he implemented here, which is suspect at best, I think we could say. Now, Big Mike posed the question, why is he standing with him? And in a weird way, he kind of had a little bit of early success. He did catch him a few times, didn't have the power, or he may have the power. And Pavlovich has just a granite shin. Who knows yet? But I made the point of, you know what? Curtis Blaydes is not known for just a center of the cage blast double. So to be able to implement that, you have to get respect on the feet. Would you agree that that was why he didn't go for those any early takedowns? Because to even be successful with it, he needed to garner some respect. And the way that Pavlovich was walking him down was saying, you get no respect in this.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I think it's what people overlook sometimes, right? In a matchup like this that on paper was very clearly striker versus grappler, right? Striker versus wrestler. That's what this was. But you have to realize as the wrestler, you've got to get yourself into position on that shot, right? And if all you're doing is walking forward and shooting, man, that leaves you devastatingly exposed to a big knee, a big uppercut up the middle. Now,
and the success rate is like very small.
Exactly. Now, what I was going to say is in a situation like this where you're facing such a destructive striker, maybe the risk is worth it. Like maybe in retrospect, you go, it's silly. But that's what when you're setting up a game plan, I mean, that guy knows you're coming to shoot in on him, right? He knows. But when you're most successful is you make your opponent think that you're ready to strike, and that's when you grapple. Or you think your opponent is ready to grapple, and that's when you strike. You know, it's all about tricking the opponent because everybody drills takedown defense. Everybody drills the counter maneuvers to it. But the key is kind of masking it and setting it up the wrong way. And so I think that's what Curtis was trying to do here is, hey, let me get, as you said, let me get just enough respect on the feet that Sergei thinks, okay, I'm comfortable here. I'm willing to play your game. And at that point, that's when I change levels and I move in or I grab the single leg or whatever the case may be, and I look for the takedown. And so I understand what he was trying to do, and so I don't necessarily fault him. I've seen a lot of criticism of Curtis Blaydes in the aftermath here saying, what are you doing? Did you think you were going to win this on the feet? No, there's not an ounce of my body that thinks Curtis Blaydes thought that he was going to win this fight on the feet. What I think he thought was that I'm going to make him think that I'm willing to engage him on the feet, and that's when I'm going to grapple, and he just never even got an opportunity to do that. So, in retrospect, maybe in hindsight, you say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have even bothered setting up. Maybe we just shoot. Maybe we just clinch. Maybe we just see what we can do in creating some scrambles. But I'm not as critical maybe as some people are of what he was trying to do here.
No, and I can't. And probably a lot of it has to do with some, people who don't understand that nuances. You know what? There's very few people built like Khabib Nurmagomedov who can literally shoot from across the cage, right? And there's very few people like that. And especially at 260 pounds, you're not built that way, right? So that's not a successful avenue for victory. So he did have to get that respect. He did have to close the distance. And closing a distance against a guy, like how big is Sergei? 6'5"?
Monster.
Yeah, I mean, that's very hard to close that distance. So you're going to have to get that respect to even get on the inside to do that. But so what's next for Sergei here? Because he came out clearly after the fight and he said in the press conference, I'm waiting. I'm not taking another fight. And I couldn't agree with him more. I think it's completely justified. And there is nobody else lined up past Stipe Miocic. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. He's making the right move by waiting here right now. I heard some people come out and say, hey, man, in fact, I don't even want to see the Stipe fight. Maybe we pull Stipe out and put Sergei in against Jon Jones. I'm just here to say that's not going to happen. Jon Jones wants to fight Stipe Miocic. I mean, that's the reason he came to heavyweight. Initially said, I want to fight Francis and I want to fight Stipe. I want to beat the guy that has the title record. That means everything to me. It's a legacy fight for me. That fight is going to happen. But Sergei's next. And I'll be honest with you, when Jon came up to heavyweight, he did, when it first got announced, I did an interview with him, and he said, look, I want to fight twice. I'm gonna take this fight with Ciryl Gane, then I'm gonna fight with Stipe, and that might be it for me. That might be done. I want to win the title, and then I want to beat the greatest champion in UFC heavyweight history, and then I'm off. And at the time, I kind of thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I felt like Sergei Pavlovich was a little too far back in the line. There weren't a lot of other names. But I'm telling you, with this latest performance and with the run that he's on, I think there's a chance that Sergei might catch the attention of Jon Jones. Because if you remember, when it came time for him to want to fight Francis Ngannou, right? It was never really about just winning the title. He said it. He's like, this is the dude that you guys say is the scariest dude on the planet, the guy that can knock everybody out, the guy that the destroyer of worlds. Let me move up and beat that guy, because when I beat that guy, you're going to see how great I am. Guess what? I think Sergei has that reputation now. I think Sergei took that reputation that Francis Ngannou had, and I think if Jon Jones can get through Stipe, now that's a big if. I'm not assuming that's the result that we get, but if it happens, I think Sergei might potentially catch the attention of Jon Jones to stick around for one more, because this dude is so scary. This is the dude that could knock everybody out. And not that Jon Jones won't prove his greatness if he beats Stipe, but who, as an MMA fan, if he gets through Stipe on International Fight Week, will not be just rubbing their hands together and say, oh, put this guy against Sergei next. Let's see that fight.
That fight will have to happen if Jon Jones can get through Stipe, which is a big if. People disrespect Stipe left and right, and I will not take part, but I will have to agree that Jon Jones is going to be the favorite going into that fight. But let's say he does get through, like, the competitor that I see Jon Jones is, he will take that fight because he doesn't want anything to mar that. He's had enough stuff that it's clouded his legacy. He seems like he's in a good enough place that that's the fight to make. That's the one to walk off on. And then and then we set up, Sergei versus maybe even a Cyril Gane to take over. Who knows what could even possibly happen after that. But if you're wanting to talk about anybody who could touch a chin and put you down, that is Sergei. And that would be a huge feather in Jon Jones's cap if and when we ever get to there.
I love it. I love the idea of it. And as I said, when Jon Jones first came to heavyweight, I really didn't think we'd see that fight. I thought, you know what? Sergei's just a little too far down the road right now. I mean, you got some other names coming up, like a Tom Aspinall looks like a potential future.
Hopefully he can recover, man, right?
Yeah. If he's back, he looks like he's a future champion, right? But I just don't see Jon Jones saying, hey, man, before I walk off, I need to beat Tom Aspinall to prove, my greatness. Look, if he gets through Stipe, Jon Jones could absolutely beat Stipe right off into the sunset and be like, hey, told you guys I was the GOAT. I proved it. I'm done. Thanks. Bye. But I just think there's going to be a lot of people clamoring, because this is the reason we wanted to see him versus Francis Ngannou, right? We never wanted to see Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou because we wanted to see if Jon Jones could be heavyweight champion. Like, the belt was almost the side part of it. We wanted to see, can he move up in weight against the scariest dude on the planet, the baddest man on planet Earth right now, and can he beat that? And I think that's what Sergei is right now. Sergei is the baddest dude on the planet, and we want to see if Jon Jones can beat that. So, look, as you said, Stipe, don't look past Stipe. I know Jon Jones and his team, they are not looking past Stipe in the least. I mean, this is the fight they wanted more than anything. But I'm telling you right now, International Fight Week, if we're sitting there on Saturday night and Jon Jones is up at the table with the heavyweight belt next to him and he's taking questions from the media, there's no way Sergei's name doesn't get brought up. And I think it might be enough to catch his attention. Only Jon Jones knows. But I know that reputation of Francis Ngannou caught his attention. Maybe this one will too.
You bring up a lot of interesting points about catching Jon Jones's attention. Sergei has been wildly overlooked by the masses. Does he have enough name value to make that the blockbuster fight that me and you know it is?
No, not in his own, but the highlight reel does. I mean, you put the UFC hype machine behind him, and you know the video packages they put together, and he's got the highlights reel. It's one thing if you're a fighter that's not exciting, that's not providing that raw footage for the UFC to work with, and now they're trying to invent some stories. You don't have to. It's the same thing we said about Francis Ngannou. I mean, is he the greatest interview of all time? No, but his highlight reel, you just see him and you're like, damn, that dude is scary. And I feel like Sergei has that as well. And then, then you start getting into the old U.S. versus Russia and whatever else you want to do. I mean, there's all kinds of storylines. You could have that.
Pro wrestling's been doing it for decades.
I'm telling you, man, you could sell it. But, dude, I think people would get excited for this one, man. I mean, it's such a destructive force. And again, I'm excited about the Stipe fight, so I'm not trying to look past that in the least. And in fact, let's just put it out there. I mean, it sounds like all parties are involved. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but we're working under the assumption this fight is going to happen in International Fight Week. I'm not looking past that one at all. I cannot wait for that fight.
They've been back and forth via social media.
Yes, they have. Yes,
you
they have.
signed the contract. No, you signed the contract.
That's it.
We agreed to sign the contract. You didn't. Like what? Like
everybody
everybody knows you're fighting. You each called for it that night. You called for it in Vegas in July.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right.
But I think, look, I do. Listen, Sergei doesn't talk a lot. Obviously, he doesn't speak English, so he has to go through an interpreter, which that always kind of changes the dynamic of everything. But even in that regards, like he's not like a big trash talker or anything like that. He's a pretty respectful dude. But the highlight reel is there. The highlight reel finishes are there. And I think if Jon Jones can beat Stipe, I think people would be very interested in seeing this fight happen.
I know I would. I just hope the masses show the appreciation that I think we've all seen this trajectory and we're like, that's a scary dude. But, it's been undercarded. He's been, and that's because of the marketability here in the North America crowd. So we need to get on board. I do want to say one thing before we kind of move on. And you brought up Aspinall's name, and hopefully he recovers well and he gets back to vintage form. His name came up with my buddy Big Mike this weekend. We're talking, and I said he has always reminded me of like a young, even more polished Frank Mir. 100%. Do you ever see that?
Oh, 100%. Like they're definitely related somehow. They got some cousins or something like that. They even kind of visually look a little bit the same, but as far as their game is definitely based on that. And that's what I think makes Tom Aspinall so dangerous. And I hope, as you said, we're hoping for a good recovery. He's definitely not rushing it back. There's been opportunities to fight in England, and he said, look, man, obviously that's his native country. And he's like, I'm not rushing back just to fight in England. Like I got longer term goals than that. And I hope he comes back at 100% because as you said, his grappling game and his athleticism at that weight are very, very impressive. As you said, almost like a younger, more athletic Frank Mir, whereas Frank was certainly athletic, but he had a lot of power base in his game. Aspinall has got, some speed and maneuverability in there as well. So, this dude definitely has some shades of Frank Mir in there, both stylistically and visually. And if he comes back, he's going to be a force in that division. I know he'll at the very least, he will fight for a title at some point in his career, I believe.
Bellator 294 and 295 was this weekend. We kind of last week touched on 294. Liz Carmouche retains. Didn't look all that great leading up, but she also said that she knew the weight cut and or lack of that was going to pay her dividends and take Bennett out of her game, which kind of proved right. But let's move on to the bigger card, which was 295, which was Saturday night in Hawaii, headlined by Patchy Mix and Rafion Stotts. A lot of crap talking going on before this. I think, and you mentioned the run that Mix was on leading up to this fight, and I don't recall the odds, but I did give Patchy a slight edge. I did not see this viciousness happening in the first round. And to recap, Patchy Mix defeated Rafion Stotts by vicious knockout by knee in round number 1.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. Gets the Grand Prix title, gets the interim title, and gets $1 million.
$1 million.
Unbelievable. It's just a phenomenal performance. And look, man, I was so pumped up for this fight, man, because these two guys are two of the absolute best bantamweights in the world. There's no question about it. Like, we talk about it all the time, right? What is the UFC at? They have the depth of roster, but that doesn't mean that there's not phenomenal fighters in other organizations around the world. And these two bantamweights right here, you could absolutely put them in the UFC's bantamweight division and they would contend. They'd be right at the top of it. So this was, to me, a dream finale in the Grand Prix. And I thought, look, man, I thought we were going to see some high-level grappling exchanges. I thought we were going to see some back and forth. I thought it was kind of a pick-em type fight as well, which is why I like it. I love fights that I'm not 100% sure who I think is going to win. If it makes you put your hands in the air and say, well, I can see this, I can see that. Those are fights I love. But Patchy Mix hits this perfectly placed knee. And he said afterwards, it was a knee that we drilled. We scouted you. We saw your game. We knew exactly how you like to attack. And it kind of leans back to what we were talking about with Curtis Blaydes versus Sergei Pavlovich, right? Like if you shoot in, not setting it up, and it's a pattern in your attacking behavior, it can be capitalized on with uppercuts, with knees. That's exactly what Patchy Mix did here. Landed the big knee, got the big finish, biggest win of his career. And yeah, let me just recap this. Beats a 29-4 Kyoji Horiguchi. beats a 19-2 Magomed Magomedov, beats a 19-1 Raufeon Stots to win this Grand Prix title. That is a phenomenal run. And man, I'm just blown away by this performance. I mean, I thought it was one of the biggest fights of the weekend, and he turned in one of the biggest performances in that spot, man. Unbelievable.
I was looking like you. I was so looking forward to this fight that usually when I'm so looking forward to a fight and it ends early, it leaves me a little bit disappointed. But the placement, the timing, the viciousness, the just the all around awesomeness of that KO. Because a lot of times we'll see knees and it's a wishful knee.
Right.
This was not. And so this did not leave me disappointed, even though I love watching Stots fight. Like, I'm a big fan of his. I love watching. I did not leave disappointed at all, even though this hugely anticipated fight that I was so looking forward to seeing ended early in round number 1. I did not leave disappointed.
Completely agree. And listen, Stots is still going to have some great days ahead of him. He is a phenomenal fighter, man. He deserved to be in this finale. And as I said, I thought it was kind of a pick 'em, but Patchy delivered on. And you're right. Sometimes when fights end quick, it's something kind of fluky, right? You know, it's something weird that happens or unfortunate or somebody makes a mistake. No, this was just a phenomenal performance. And I mean, just an absolute exclamation mark on this Grand Prix. And what a way just to end that 2-night run in Hawaii once again for Bellator. I mean, it's capped off absolutely perfectly. It was great, man. It really was a phenomenal performance. So I'm excited to see kind of where Patchy Mix goes from here. You know, obviously you've got Sergio Pettis, the champion right now, but he's got Patricio Pitbull lined up next. Patricio Pitbull coming down a division, man. I mean, the post, I mean, that's a phenomenal fight in itself. And then you got Patchy Mix waiting in the wings to fight the winner of that. I mean, Bellator's got some great title fights coming up in that division.
Their video package of what is on tap. After the main event, they're like, you know, and Showtime and Bellator did this. Hey, what's on tap in the next coming up in Bellator MMA? And I just was like,
they got some big fights.
Holy
they got some
smokes.
big fights.
And I didn't realize this. Patricio Pitbull, this could be his 3rd Bellator world title in a 3rd division.
Unbelievable, man. What he's trying to accomplish and trying to do, I mean, it's almost unprecedented. It's not something we've seen very often, especially at the highest level of the sport. And Bellator absolutely is at the highest level of sport. As we said, look, I get it, man. I'll never argue that the UFC is not the top organization on the planet. It is. But if you're an MMA fan and you want to see high-level MMA and you see other organizations, you go, oh, well, it's not the UFC, so why do I even care? Guys like this, fights like this, athletes like this are why you should care. There are great fighters in organizations around the world.
And I'm going to give you a direct one-to-one comparison. Great friend of mine, Jaleel Willis. He is a Bellator fighter. He had contracts from both on the table. Simultaneously, it was his choice who he was going to go with. He chose Bellator for monetary reasons. I think he probably made the smarter decisions. He has now kind of made a little name for himself, and he's up in that middle tier payday, which is making a great life for him and his family. But to your point, UFC wanted Jaleel. Bellator wanted Jaleel. They both wanted him. He went with Bellator, and that just proves if he's doing it, a lot of guys are doing it. They're fighting over the same talent. It just depends on what this talent wants to be known for or how they want to get to where they're going. That's really almost a determining factor in whether these guys are going.
It's really interesting because the way I always put it is this: like, there's no like 15-year-old kid right now that's in the gym right now. They're hitting a bag. They're going through class that says, I'm dreaming of being the Bellator champion. Everybody that's a kid dreams of being the UFC champion, right? That's the dominant brand. It has been for years. It's been the place to go, right? But then when you get there and you realize, hold on, man, what are we doing this for? It's prize fighting. And if I can have multiple different organizations bidding for my services and I can make more money going elsewhere, then you have a real decision to make. Is it, you know, I grew up dreaming of being the UFC champion, but I can also be a world champion in Bellator. I can also be a world champion in one championship. I can also be a world champion in PFL. And oh, by the way, they're offering me more guaranteed money up front. And that's why I'm really doing this, is to pay for my family, to put a roof over our heads, to put my kids through school, to do all that. And sometimes if you step back and say, well, wait a minute, I can make more money over there, then that might be the better place to go do it. So listen, again, the UFC to me is the elite level of MMA. There's no question about it, man. It's got the deepest roster. I mean, you look at their divisions, their welterweight division has like 75 killers in it, where anybody can compete. But there are other places out there, and the people at the top of the game in those other organizations, they're absolutely capable of competing in the UFC or with anybody in the world.
Another fight that I do want to touch on in 295, Aaron Pico, we know what happened to him in his last fight. He suffered that kind of gruesome shoulder injury. I don't know how the injury was necessarily gruesome, but how they were trying to put it back in was tremendously gruesome. We showed pictures and clips on a previous episode. Go ahead and check those out in the archives. But Aaron Pico defeated James Gonzalez by unanimous decision, stepping up on short notice with a very impressive victory. Not much to really talk about in the fight. Aaron Pico does what Aaron Pico does. He's just a tremendous, tremendous athlete. Was on the verge of being a Team USA Olympic wrestler, was a Golden Gloves boxer. He is solid across the board. After this victory, stepping up on short notice, he calls for an interim title shot and said the title should not be held up right now. Do you think he should get an interim title shot?
I do. I absolutely do. I love exactly what he's saying. He laid it out perfectly. First of all, 26 years old, Aaron Pico. I mean, still so young. Looking like a grown man now, though, with the beard and everything. I'm like, when did he start looking like this? But as you said, took on a very tough James Gonzalez, a guy that I had seen come through the CFFC. I know what he's capable of. He beat a guy in Pat Sabatini, who's in the UFC right now, just to speak to what
he did in CF. Was that the injury fight?
That was the injury. That was the injury fight with James Gonzalez. So, I mean, here's somebody that can compete at the highest level. And Aaron Pico took him on a week's notice and said it all along. He's like, he comes from a great team. This was not an easy, I didn't think this was an easy fight by any stretch, but I was willing to take the challenge. And he just looked phenomenal. Aaron Pico, I think a lot of people made the mistake of writing off Aaron Pico because he did come into the sport so young, man. And the deck was stacked against him. And with all the hype that was around him, it was like he had to be the greatest fighter in the history of the planet or he wasn't going to live up to the expectations. And he struggled a little bit early on. But he's matured since then, and he's in a great place mentally. He's obviously, as you said, an incredible athlete, an incredible fighter. And I like what he's saying about, hey, let's do an interim title fight right now. I mean, the champ is moving to another division. Let's go ahead and put something together. I think it's the right call, to be honest with you. I don't see why Bellator wouldn't be interested in doing it. I mean, sometimes there's interim title fights that are put in place, and you're like, well, what was really the point of that? But there is a point in here, right? What if Pitbull goes down, wins the title at 35, and decides he wants to stay there? Well, we need to know what to do. Boom, we've already got an interim champion in place. They can now be the undisputed champion, and we carry on the division. Or, then maybe he doesn't, and he comes back, and then you unify the titles. This is a situation where it does actually make sense. The champ is departing the division for who knows how long. We got to have something in the meantime. Why don't we do an interim title fight? I love the idea, and I love the fact that he was willing to call for it. And I feel like Aaron Pico, man, is really starting to peak as a fighter.
Aaron Pico has always been a fascinating guy, character, fighter, however you want to call it. Obviously came in with tremendously huge fanfare. And maybe not a lot of people knew him really. I think you gotta live in those wrestling circles to have really known who Aaron Pico is. And I'm not going to say I live in those, but I follow him very closely. And I even watched a documentary of Aaron Pico as a teenager, traveling with the Junior Team USA, traveling all over the world and just smashing fools, right? And so I was so intrigued with him coming in, which then I was ultimately left with a little bit of disappointment. But when you can tell a guy is, like I said, like Pavlovich is built for this. Aaron Pico is built for this. It's about competition for him. There are certain people who are the most ultimate competitors, like on the face of the earth, that they have, the Mamba mentality. That is Aaron Pico. Aaron Pico has been doing this his entire life across multiple sports. Like we said, he was a Golden Gloves boxer too, as well as one of the greatest, junior wrestlers in the world. Yep. And so if you think that any moment is going to be bigger, and I'm going to say, I think he should get this just on what he has proven, not over a small body of work. the vast body of work that this guy has. And now that we see this unpolished gem starting to get polished, man, and he's still only 26, and we've been hearing about him. Well, I've been hearing about him for a decade.
Yeah. I mean, like, as you said, those are the hardcore in the know, like, heard about him before he ever made his debut. But then even when he made his debut, man, you come out and there's like this ESPN article, is this the greatest prospect in the history of martial arts? I mean, you talk about that as expectations. I mean, that's insane. He came in for his debut against a fighter who was 8-2. I mean, 10 fights in 8, not 10 fights in 5-5, not 10 fights in 3-7, 10 fights and they're 8-2 at that point in his career. He came in against a legit fighter in his debut and he lost. And you know how people work. You know, here was this guy. Oh, I thought he was amazing. And they love to hate, and everybody was down on him. But he battled back, you know, and then he got up to the top, had some setbacks again, and he's had to kind of rebuild this mountain a couple of times, but he's done it because, as you said, he does have that mentality. He does have that mental strength. And it's funny, man. You talk to him now, and he'll openly admit, you know, I remember asking him, like, can you put yourself back in that mindset of fight number one? Like, what did you think you know versus what you actually knew? And he laughs. He's like, I didn't know nothing, man. I thought I knew it, but I didn't know anything. But now I know. Now I know what it takes to win. Now I know what it takes to compete. Now I know what it takes. I mean, you know, as somebody who competes, obviously in a much different category in jiu-jitsu, but there's still, when you're at that competition level, it's a different feel. It's a lot different than in the room and practice, and we're having some friendly rolls out there. Same thing at the highest level of mixed martial arts. It's a whole different feel, and he's getting there now. So, look, Aaron Pico, man, if you wrote him off, if you jumped off the bandwagon, I think you made a mistake, man. This guy is the real deal, and I love the fact that he's saying, hey, put me in there with Jeremy Kennedy. Let's run this thing back, and let's do it for an interim title. To me, Bellator matchmakers, you're welcome. They just did your job for you. You know what I mean? They'll do it. That's the fight to make for me for the interim title.
In which Jeremy Kennedy is a prime candidate for that. He was this budding prospect who then got the victory over Aaron Pico, albeit marred by a shoulder injury. But let's see it with both of them are healthy, and, you know, the cream will rise to the top.
Absolutely. Kennedy kind of followed that up with a win over Pedro Carvalho, so he kept himself relevant. He kept himself at the top of the heap. To me, man, that's the fight to make. And, you know, Adam Boric is up there in the rankings as well, but Kennedy beat Adam, so I think you go Kennedy and Pico, interim title, and then either that becomes the undisputed champ if Pitbull stays away, or that's the fight that you make when he comes back to the division. It all lines up.
We had some fights in ONE FC this past weekend. Not a lot to talk about. A new Muay Thai world champion. If you have not seen the knockout,
Huge knockout.
do yourself a favor. Go check Amazon Prime. Search for ONE FC or ONE Championship. I apologize. Search for ONE Championship from this past Friday night, and you are going to be like, I'm glad I did.
Listen, man, as you said, we cover MMA more than anything else. You know, when there's Muay Thai at the top of the cards, we kind of talk about one a little bit less because that's not really what we focus on most. But I'm telling you, Muay Thai and 4-ounce gloves,
Woo!
Oh my goodness. It's exciting every time. And this was a huge win, huge win, and a big upset. And it's worth checking out. As you said, it's right there on ONE Prime Video, man. They do a great job. And that's all leading up to their U.S. debut here in a couple of weeks in Colorado. So definitely go check it out. I'll be there. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
So let's go ahead and look ahead. A few week hiatus for Bellator. So really not much on the docket that we'll talk about immediately. But we got UFC Fight Night 223 this weekend. A card that is slightly less than impressive. We'll just go ahead and say that. But building prospects in Song Yadong 19-7-1 versus Ricky Simone 20-3. And I think this fight really is going to just kind of determine who that we could say the next prospect or future title challenger could possibly be.
I mean, here's the thing. That bantamweight division is stacked, so it's tough. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's like number 8 versus number 10, so it's not like the winner of this is going to come out and say, I'm next for the title. But they keep themselves relevant in that picture, right? You got to beat these names. So, it looks on paper, it's going to be a very, very entertaining main event. It doesn't have immediate title stakes, but it does have relevant rankings implications. So the winner of this will be in a much better position than the guy that loses, who's going to have to build himself up, especially in that UFC bantamweight division, just absolutely full of killers. So it's an intriguing fight, but not one that you say, okay, well, the winner of this is coming out and fighting for the title next. And so To me, that's what really gets excited, right? I said one thing that really excites me about fights is when I look at it and I'm not sure who I think is probably going to prove victorious. And this is a good fight. It's very competitive like that. I think this could do it. But the other thing is you go, and I know the winner is going to get such and such next, right? Like I know this guy's fighting for the title next, or I know what this leads to. This doesn't really lead to anything where you're like, okay, well, the immediate next move is this. So it's a big fight. It's an important fight. I think it's going to be an entertaining fight. And there's not a whole lot of other stuff going on, but it's not one that, it's leading directly to a title shot or anything along those lines.
And Song Yudong he's a fun fighter to watch, though. So it's definitely going to be worth my time to watch.
Agreed.
And plus, I'm just going to say, hey, babe, I'm working. Like, I can't do bath time right now. I'm working.
Leave me alone. Got to work.
What I am, and I think we've talked about this fight more than any other show, podcast, anything. Looking forward, UFC's 288 May 6th, Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo. I don't think we really need to dive into like the X's and O's and the predictions, but I don't think I've ever been more excited about a 45 fight since Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo. Oh, I'm sorry, 35.
35,
yeah. Right? Typically they sent that division away for a while, right? And like it's just because it doesn't garner that attention and that excitement. I am so excited for Sterling and Cejudo, and I don't know why. Maybe it's the characters involved or the ultimate respect that I have for Henry Cejudo, albeit the king of cringe. If you don't have the ultimate respect for that guy, what he has accomplished, he's almost like, I can see almost a trajectory like Aaron Pico. He didn't reach what Henry Cejudo did, but kind of similar lineages, right?
I agree.
Against the human backpack in Aljamain Sterling, that brash talking, I don't give a damn. I'm going to wear my gold chain and throw my fingers in the air if I want to. I'm just so pumped.
I am. No, I absolutely love this fight as well, man. It's interesting, right? Because we don't know what kind of Henry Cejudo we're going to get, but that's what makes it more intriguing, right? I mean, the mystery of the layoff and how good is he going to look, and here he comes back to fight for the title. And I think it's a lot of those things that you talked about. I mean, obviously, stakes of the fight. I mean, it's the title is on the line, and there's big matchups that could happen moving forward. And Cejudo, if he wins, maybe he even tries to make the move up to 45 and capture a third division champion. I mean, who knows? But it's the characters too, right? I mean, they are characters, both of them, and they're each a little bit cringe in their own way. Aljamain Sterling is a little bit cringe sometimes. Some of the things he says, it's a little bit wild out there, but they're both characters. They're both brash. They're both out there. And I think too, stylistically, I know, you and I both love the grappling aspect of the game as well. Not that this won't take place on the feet, not that there won't be strikes thrown as well, but I think you and I are both kind of grappling enthusiasts as well. And I think the stylistic nature of this, the Olympic gold medalist versus, as you said, the human backpack, the human JanSport, the human anaconda, Aljamain Sterling. It's fun, man. It really is an intriguing matchup, and I'm fired up for it as well, man. I'm looking forward to this one.
Henry Cejudo has his marketability, in my opinion, has never been higher, right? If we want to talk about, I almost liken him to Cody Rhodes in a little bit. If you're a pro wrestling fan, a guy who like left the WWE, says, I can make a bigger name for myself outside of it. Because at the end of the day, even though Henry Cejudo was a double champ, he probably was not given the respect that he truly deserves. And I'm not saying from the UFC, but I'm talking from the collective body. Like, his accomplishments weren't really praised and respected as much as I think they probably should have been, probably because he fights in that lower weights. But then he goes out. He starts doing his tutorials on social media. He starts coaching other fighters. John Jones worked with him. Jingling Liang started working with him. A lot of these fighters are going to Henry Cejudo because of the fight game IQ and the mental toughness that he has. And through that, I think a lot of people have garnered a lot more respect for Henry Cejudo than they ever thought that he ever did before. And because they know the depth of his knowledge is more than they ever could have thought back in the day.
I agree. I think, his YouTube channel and him doing those breakdowns and all the stuff he's done, I think that's gone a long way towards the general public seeing what all of us saw behind the scenes for years, right? I mean, Henry was always playing a character to a degree, and he openly talked about it. I mean, there were some interviews he did where he was like, man, do you know how much like guts it takes for me, how much bravery it takes for me to go out on stage with like pillows and throwing them around and pulling a snake out of a hat.
Oh, that snake one was the worst, man.
Right, he's slamming the snake down on the stage. I mean, just he's like
wearing the crown. Oh my gosh, Henry.
And he admitted, he's like, dude, I'm putting my butt on the line when I do dumb stuff like that. But he knows, he's like, I gotta hype it. I gotta sell the show. I gotta get people involved and talk about it. Even if that means that I'm the king of cringe, that people are kind of making fun of me, at least they're talking about me and at least they're seeing it. And again, in the fight game, right? Whether it's people want to pay money because they want to see you win, or if it's whether they want to pay money because they want to see you get your tail kicked, that's what you just need to get people interested. And that's what Henry Cejudo was doing. But all that time behind the scenes, you had this genius, and we would have these conversations with him kind of off camera or backstage or whatever. And the dude knows the fight game inside and out. He's a tactical genius, man. He understands it all. And I think you're absolutely right. People are starting to see that now. And I believe from a general fan perspective, I think there's more respect right now for Henry Cejudo than there ever has been. Now, what'll happen on fight week when these guys get together and all this, the antics are there? We'll see. We'll see. But I'm with you, man. I absolutely cannot wait for this title fight. It's a phenomenal title fight. And that bantamweight division is stacked full of killers. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen afterwards. This is a big one.
All right, again, tune in next week and we'll kind of break that fight down a little bit more. But a fight that I don't need to break down, but probably the most overlooked title challenger, or a guy who's should have had title shots, but just circumstances haven't made it possible. Belal Muhammad is taking on Gilbert Burns. And here's what I don't even want to talk about the fight. I want to talk about how this fight even was made. This fight is in 2 weeks. Gilbert Burns just fought. Literally just fought 2 weeks ago. Okay? Then he's calling, I want to weigh in for this next fight, and I want to get the immediate title shot. To then now calling out Muhammad, who Muhammad's been over here screaming, saying, the shot is mine, which we all agree the shot probably should, and would have been his. Okay? If it wasn't for Colby Covington and all these other crazy circumstances surrounding that 170-pound division. To then Belal Muhammad is saying, well, I can't make weight this soon. And then Gilbert Burns is saying, well, I thought you wanted anybody, anytime, any place. And he goes, well, let's do catch weight. And Gilbert Burns is saying, no, we're not doing a catch weight. To then Muhammad was looking like he wasn't going to take this fight. Now on 2 weeks notice, or 3 weeks when it got announced, now the fight is on. And not only is it on, it's not a catch weight. It's at 170. Oh, yeah. And it's 5 rounds. How in the hell did this fight materialize?
Because these are two guys that are about that life, man. You know what I'm saying? These are two guys that both have felt I think Belal Muhammad has felt disrespected. I don't think Gilbert Burns has necessarily felt disrespected, but I think he's felt like a little bit overlooked. I mean, he's had some opportunities, yes. Belal never got his opportunity. So, but both of them want to be back in there. I think both of them are frustrated that Colby Covington is getting the next title shot, but both of them want to prove that, hey, they are deserving of the shot after that. And so they said, hey, let's get in there and let's do it. And as you said, let's not do it at 75 or somewhere. Let's do it at 70. So it's an actual welterweight fight and nobody can say that it doesn't matter. Let's do it at 5 rounds so that nobody can say anything about that. Let's do everything we need to do to prove that we are the ones that deserve to be in there next. I love it. I love the fact that these two dudes stepped up. Is it ideal circumstances for either one of them? No, not necessarily, but that's what you do. I mean, anybody, anytime, any place, if that's what you're going to say, then you got to be willing to step up and do it. And listen, I'm sure the UFC helped facilitate this as well because, look, they lost a couple of fights off that UFC 288 card. They needed a little something extra to kind of pump up that pay-per-view a little bit. Obviously, they got to go out and sell those buys, and I think this really does that. It's a fight that has meaning. It's a fight between two guys that are trying to prove where they belong and that are willing to go out there and step up and do it. You know, a lot of people talk about it, and you hear Dana White say it a lot, right? Where it says like, oh, well, you know, people say things to the media, people say things in public, and then we get them backstage afterwards and we're trying to negotiate, and all of a sudden, nah, I can't really, I got this going on. I can't, you know, these two dudes aren't that. These two guys are willing to say, let's go. And I love it, man. Regardless of what happens in this fight, man, I think both these fighters should have earned your respect as being willing to, as you said, not just step up on short notice, but step up on short notice in a 5-round fight on top of that. I mean, it's crazy, and I love it.
And not to mention, Muhammad is coming off of his religious period of fasting, being and not being able to eat or drink all day long until the sun goes down, and he's freaking training for a 5-round fight and agrees to it. You want to talk about, yes, to your point, who is built for this life? That man.
100%, man. Going through Ramadan and training at a high level, I can't imagine. I mean, doing a practice and you can't drink water. I mean, it's mad to me to think that you could do that. But here we are, and these two guys, I love it, man. They're putting everything on the line, right? No protecting your ranking. No, oh, I need this spot. I got that. Nope. I believe I'm the best guy in the world. I believe I need to fight for the title. How do I prove that? I fight somebody else that's in the same position. I love it. I have all the respect in the world for these two men.
I'll tell you what, I am looking forward to this pay-per-view as much as I'm looking forward to any of these big blockbuster Jon Jones, Cyril Gane, like the huge names on top, because this is the pay-per-view for the diehards.
I agree.
This is the pay-per-view for the people who understand how good certain people are, and regardless of weight or characters or whatever, this is like, it's just the talent and the overlookedness of some of the fighters on this card are the best in the world, and I am so excited. I don't even know how to articulate my point right there. I mean, you understand what I'm saying, though,
I
right?
think you nailed it. 100%. I mean, I was looking at the lineup as you were talking about that. So, I mean, we talked about the two featured matchups. The rest of the main card, Jessica Andrade versus Yan Xiaonan, Mosar Evloev versus Bryce Mitchell. That's going to be a crazy fight. Crone Gracie versus Charles Jourdain. I mean, okay, I could see a casual person looking at that lineup and going, I don't know. I'm not sure I know these people. If you know, you know. These fights are going to be good. This is a solid card. This is a pay-per-view for the hardcores.
Yeah, I mean, in a weird world, it like Bryce Mitchell might be the most famous one on this whole card.
That's wild, man.
You know, that's wild. He's right, like 8th in the division, and we got these title fights of Henry Cejudo always been like, I'm not going to go off on my tirades again. I'm just looking forward to it. But this weekend, switching sports, this weekend, BKFC, Luke Rockhold, who always through the cryptic retirement, I'm too old for this. I'm too old for this shit quote out there. We thought he was retiring. He's coming back this weekend in bare knuckle fighting championships to take on the complete insanity yet dog that is platinum Mike Perry. You know, if that isn't overshadowed and not wrong terminology, but not to be outdone, but by Eddie Alvarez versus Chad Mendes, who says this will probably be his last fight. You have the underground king, Eddie Alvarez, going against Chad Mendes in bare knuckle fighting. Luke Rockhold, Mike Perry, bare knuckle fighting on pay-per-view. This is kind of crazy.
I love it, right? Because listen, BKFC is a lot of fun to watch. I mean, we talk about all, this is a pay-per-view. We talk about it being the best value. Normally, most of their events go through just their app, which is like $7.99 a month, and you get to watch it all. So it is. This one you are going to have to pony up for, but I get it, man. This is a fight lineup that you want to pony up for, and it really does feel like a very MMA-centric, kind of a show in BKFC. Mike Perry versus Luke Rockhold. That is crazy. I mean, Mike Perry, this man was made for BKFC, right? Like, this is his home. I mean, he just gets to throw hands. He gets to be a personality. He gets to be a character. Meanwhile, Luke Rockhold changing things up a little bit, right? Thought he was done, and now he's going to come in here. It's interesting because, you think about Luke Rockhold, you think about the kicks that he throws. You think about the grappling game that he has, and he doesn't get to use any of that. Now he's just going to come out and throw hands with the madman that is Mike Perry. Chad Mendes versus Eddie Alvarez. I mean, that is a phenomenal fight in itself. By the way, you got some others. Christine Fajeda versus Beck Rawlings is on there. Chris Camozzi against Dan Spahn. Some MMA names as well. So just a whole lot of real MMA names on there. So I'm excited about this one. I think this is a good one. I mean, no disrespect to the UFC card, but this might be the card of the weekend right here, right? I mean, these are the big names.
The size, I'm anxious to see the real size difference between Luke Rockhold and Mike Perry. If you're going to tell Mike Perry, like, if we're going to say, this title from this episode should be built for this game. Mike Perry's built for this game, right? He's going up in weight. Well, I don't know for not fight. Like, I don't even know what weight class this is, but I'm just telling you, there is going to be a massive size difference in this fight.
Yeah. I think they're fighting at 185. I hope I didn't get that wrong. I believe they're fighting at 185, which is obviously Luke Rockhold's, weight class. So Mike Perry's got to move up and weight to do that. Obviously, he won't have to cut weight, so that's good for him. But man, yeah, I'm telling you, Mike Perry has thrived in BKFC, both in terms of, as he said it, I don't have to worry about wrestling. I don't have to worry about grappling. I don't have to train any of that. I can just train throwing hands. And they really embrace the personality. This is not the, hey, make sure you wear the uniform and you don't get any. I mean, no, they embrace you going out there and being a bit of a personality and having some flair out there. And Mike Perry has thrived there. And Luke Rockhold, listen, man, say what you will about that last fight, but he showed he's got some dog in him. He went out there and threw down a little bit. You know what I mean? That was super, super entertaining. So, yeah, I'm excited. But again, the thing about this that's wild is that, you're taking away some of Luke Rockhold's best weapons. And so, I mean, I think, both guys are kind of putting something on the line here and taking some risks. So I'm excited for this one. And then Chad Mendes and Eddie Alvarez is just nuts. Those two dudes are going to go out and actually throw down. Chad Mendes is an absolute tank now. And Eddie Alvarez, man, he always brings it, man. That's the thing we've always loved about Eddie Alvarez. No matter where in the world he's fighting, he's coming in to put on a show. So
I know that Eddie Alvarez is going to get knocked down a few times and never stop fighting. I know that is going to happen. It has literally happened in every one of his MMA fights for the last decade.
He's going to get dropped, and that's when the fight starts.
Man, and I just have to think back when we're saying that, Mike Perry's built for this Lang. His BKFC debut, I believe, was against Julian Lang. I just want to bang. And there's this epic photo of Mike Perry just spitting his own blood out. And it's misting like he was Triple H, right? Spitting his water, but he's spitting blood out. And his face is just covered in blood. Like, built for this.
Built for it, man. He is an absolute character. He is must-watch TV every time. And, he said it, look, I think I thrive here. I don't have to go through the wrestling practice anymore. I don't have to go through the jiu-jitsu practice anymore. I'm just focused on what I like to do. And hey, let it be said, I mean, it seems like he's in a much better place too in his personal life as well. He's had some open struggles over the years, outside of the cage, but it seems like he's in a good place there as well, which is great to see. Because he's a character, man. He's definitely somebody you want to watch compete.
When Mike Perry fights, I always turn in because and let's just say his jiu-jitsu game was actually pretty freaking legit when he was fighting MMA. Bad. It's kind of crazy. But man, this was actually a fun episode. We saw the greatness and just the raw power speed of Pavlovich. Curtis Blade just unfortunately is a guy who just can't seem to get over that last hump that he needs to get over. Patchy Mix earns that $1 million with a completely vicious first round knee knockout. Aaron Pico, hope he gets that interim title shot versus Kennedy. I'd love to see it. UFC this weekend, UFC next weekend, which I'm tremendously looking forward to. And if you are so inclined, pay the $49.99 and watch BKFC because you're probably definitely going to see some next level violence. What do you have going on?
Home game for me this week. I'm going to stick around here, so it'll be a nice lighter schedule for me. So I will be at that UFC event. So I'll have coverage from Media Day on Wednesday, weigh-ins on Friday, and then I'll be at the fights on Saturday. And I'll respectfully have the BKFC event maybe pulled up on my computer screen, tucked away in a corner there, where I'm not. I'll be taking one in live and one in on the computer screen there. So that's myself. A little bit easier. No travel this week.
I love it, man. I got hopefully the Grizzlies will pull out a victory in LA tonight, even up that series at 2 games apiece, coming home to FedEx Forum on Wednesday night. I will be there. It's always a ruckus crowd here in Memphis. Hopefully take the lead and then go in and win it all. Win the series in LA. It's a tall task right now against.
They might have some MMA fights in that series, huh?
Man, you just got to hear talk radio around here. Dylan the Villain, Dylan Brooks. He just don't give a damn. He don't give a damn. He's an MMA fighter. He's a pro wrestler. He's a basketball player. And you know what? He's a guy who just doesn't care. He doesn't care. He, as he said, called LeBron James old. He pokes the bear. But that probably wasn't a smart move.
that's a poking the bear can be a little bit dangerous, but I did love it. I love somebody that just doesn't care. I'm coming out to say what I got to say, and I don't care what you got. But yeah, that's a pretty big bear to poke, by the way.
Here's the thing. I was all for him poking the bear. Like, I was like, hell yeah, that's my guy. That's Dylan Brooks, Dylan the villain. I love it. I'm a brash talking guy. I'm built for intensity. But then you go out and you put up 9 points in the first quarter. We get blown out 35-9 in the first quarter. It's the lowest points scored in a quarter all year. NBA, regular season, and playoffs. And we throw that dud in the first quarter. It's like, listen, if you're going to poke the bear, you at least got to fight the bear.
You better be ready.
Oh, my goodness. And we weren't ready. So, but hopefully tonight we are. Follow John Morgan on Twitter. He's going to be recapping, he's going to be showing you some behind the scenes stuff of his weekend coming up with UFC Fight Night. And he always has great content. Check out the underground mixedmartialarts.com. He's posting great articles, great content on there. Go ahead, watch this. You can watch any of our podcasts here, grindcitymedia.com, YouTube, listen to it, Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And again, my Twitter, not very good, but I encourage you to follow me. And if I get more followers, I might be a little more active. E_Mac Life.
And he got double gold. And he got, follow the man for getting double gold.
Double gold, baby, in the old man division. Old man division. I love it. I was tired. I persevered. I said, listen, I'm tired. 3 minutes left. Shit. I'm going to hold on for victory. I'm just going to lay and pray. And I did. And I did it successfully.
Well done, sir. Well done, sir. Jump in there and give the Grizz a prep talk. Show them what you did, man.
Yeah.
Fire them up.
Hey, guys, lay and pray, baby. Lay and pray. Get your takedown. Make one pass. Lay and pray.
That's great.
Anyways, well, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.